Hi, I'm Solène Tircuir, sociologist, global health expert, and immigrant storyteller.
And I'm Sacha Ledon, entrepreneur, startup advisor, and lifelong connector of founders from every corner of the globe.
Welcome to Beyond Borders, a podcast about what it really means to build a life, a career, or a dream far from home.
Each week, we speak with people who've crossed countries and cultures, sharing the challenges, the breakthroughs, and the unexpected moments in between. That's where the real story begins. Welcome to Beyond Borders.
Hi everybody! Today I'm here with Nathalie Bonin. Nathalie is a Grammy-winning composer, accomplished violinist, and founder of Nathalie Bonin Music. She has created powerful scores for film, television, and international production, blending classical mastery with bold contemporary innovation. Born and raised in Canada, Nathalie has built a career that transcends borders, musical, cultural, and professional. Her work embodies a unique ability to connect people through sound, emotion, and storytelling. Nathalie, welcome to Beyond Borders.
Thank you, Solène. It is my absolute pleasure to be with you guys.
Nathalie, let's start with your journey. What originally inspired you to dedicate yourself to music? And how did your path evolve from violinist to composer for major productions?
Well, there's an entire book I could write about this, but to summarize, I got exposed to music through my mom when I was 4, and I went to a young violinist concert. And I remember the feeling of being just in awe of all these kids playing together, enjoying themselves on the stage, and wanting to be part of that. So it was very genuine and, childlike desire to be part of that group. And so I started violin the next season, and I kept on doing violin mostly for, my education through a bachelor's degree as a violinist. But as I explored music, I developed a sense of creativity, and I wanted to explore composition and improvisation. So that led to performing with various groups, which I'm sure I'll talk about more later. This whole exploration phase led to composition, and through that, film scoring, which is what brought me to LA, developed that side of my creativity through film scoring and documentary scoring and a lot of album projects.
So obviously you had such a unique and diverse experience in this industry, and would love to explore more all these different themes with you. You're now in LA, you're coming from Canada, and you had all these different steps and stages in your career. So if you can share some very important moments for you.
Yes, I feel like it's been chapters in my career. Exploration chapters. When I started, it was just exploring the violin, the music as a child, as a kid, and having fun improvising at home and wanting to get an emotional response from whoever I was playing to. I remember telling my aunt, I will make you cry, and I was just 7, and she laughed a little bit, but, sometimes I did. It was finding that emotional connection with already my first small audience of my family and friends around. Later on, as I went into I wanted to explore various groups and styles, and so I played with tango groups, flamenco, Moroccan, fusion, hybrid jazz, and that was so fascinating for me because it was like a world was opening. I was so concentrated on classical music all the way through my bachelor's degree, and which was great because it got me to be so disciplined and learn my skills, I think very necessary. But it also was limiting in a way because I was only exposed to one genre. When I started playing with other groups, it felt like, oh my goodness, there is such a big world out there that I want to explore. And I think that pivotal moments were many because I met key people on my journey, I think I told you I actually did a pre-med little curve where I wanted to go in med school. And so the reason that I came back was that my soul was calling for music, but in a more creative way. So when I came back, I sent an intent and said, I want to be part of a group, an improvisation group. And that's how I got to be referred to this trio, which was a Mahavishnu influenced jazz fusion group with violin, guitar, and tabla. I had never done anything like that, and it was very, very challenging for me. But that was one of the pivotal moments that opened the door to so many other things because I discovered jazz, I discovered the freedom from the score, and kind of getting used to not having that safety net of the written note and relying on my inspiration of the moment and my skills to, send a message to my audience that was pure inspiration of the moment. So I would say that was one of the key moments that opened my eyes and my ears.
The diversity and the different approaches of storytelling and culture through music is really something quite deep. Based on this moment you just described, what was something surprising that you discover along the way in the way people approach music?
Right. A lot of it is about perception and how different cultures feel music and the structure of the music. I was very much used to a very set rules of form. For example, when you play a classical music, you are going to play the music as is. You are not going to add on sections, and you're going to play the music and perform it in your own way, but it's still within the box. When I explored with, for example, another ensemble, Saïd Mesnaoui is a Moroccan hajouj player, this big bass that basically plays a fifth. And it's a very dance-rooted music with percussion, and a lot of time flute is involved. And I realized by learning the pieces with the band, it was very, very difficult at first because there was no form. It was open. The piece could last 5 minutes. It usually lasted 20 minutes. But you had to get accustomed to cues, to transitions, to communication, and the beat, the sense of the one. When you're in music, you need to, well, the way that we learn it is usually there's a downbeat. And to have a coherent downbeat is usually important for Western musical cultures. But in these settings, a lot of times they don't perceive the one necessarily at the same time, but it's all patterns that go within, and that creates the groove. And as long as you understand your part of the groove, you may have a different one, but that's okay because you're part of the groove and you're going with it. So there's kind of a letting go of formality, of form, of the set box, and just kind of diving into a little bit of the unknown, but it's also safe because the other players are giving you cues that you learn to understand and go with. So it's another mindset completely. I remember actually my friend Jean-Luc Ponty, he's a violinist, and he introduced me to his African band when he was doing his African project. He said the same thing. He said, I asked around all the percussion players, there were a dozen, none of them had the same downbeat. And he said, how am I supposed to know where to fit my melodies? And he said the only way he could figure it out was to dance to it. He had to learn by dancing to the groove to feel where the music, his melodies would fit. So that's a perfect example.
I'm really fascinated by this process and also wondering how much as a challenge is it for you to adapt to these new codes and norms of way of playing, as much as it may be a self-discovery process?
It is because it tests your habits and I guess your safety zone, the place where you feel comfortable playing in, the playground that you're used to. So for me, it was totally like taking me from one pond to the other and saying, oh, you've got new environment, new plants, new fish, new everything. And how do you navigate? How do you swim in those waters? And as long as you're not afraid and you welcome, the community that you're diving into, I mean, usually it's been a very expansive experience for me and a big learning experience because not only did I learn about the music, but I learned about the people, the story, the culture, and it's all linked together. So it ultimately makes sense and you end up being very comfortable but at first it is a little scary.
Do you think that your music is the way of creating a bridge between culture and different audiences as well?
I hope so. I think that we all need to understand that we are connected. I think that that's one notion that is being proven through science even, right? Our atoms, our cells are connected. We're communicating all the time. We send vibrations, we send frequencies. So we are one. But there are nods of stories, nods of cultures, nods of maybe different frequencies that we need to adapt and harmonize with. And I think that by bridging the gaps through music, we connect people in a way that it feels closer. When you learn to play music with another musician that has another cultural background, you also saying, I respect you, I love what you're doing, I want to know more. And so you show that you're open to that, and vice versa. If you accept the challenge in a way, then you're showing that you care. Um, and I think we need that. I think it's a message of peace to combine the various culture to play together. I think the more the music evolves, there are less genres defining the music. It's more about blends and collaborations and how we can create together something that is fresh and new but can come from so many sources.
I love this sense of community that you're describing through this creative process. What about this community you found in LA, and what led you to cross the border from Canada to the US and ending up here in California?
I think there's many reasons. First of all, I was actually born in San Francisco, but my parents are French Canadian. So I was just a baby when they went back to Canada, where I grew up. But I feel there might be a little part of my DNA that was always Californian, so there might have been a little calling from that. Also, when I was, at a point in my life where I had a transition from being in a married setting and now kind of going on my separate way, I had the opportunity to try something new. And it felt like this door was there for a time, and I could take that opportunity to really dive into something. I had felt at that moment that I wanted to explore new grounds with my career. I had done already a pretty expensive career in Quebec as a touring musician on all the major TV shows. I knew all the concert halls, classical, pop, jazz, whatever. I had done all of them. Basically, I was kind of like not bored, but I felt like there was something I wanted to explore and out of my comfort zone. I had also recently discovered film scoring, which I developed a big passion for. And it felt like Los Angeles was the place to go to really try my chances and just explore that new realm. That was very new for me. So in 2015, I just decided that it was one of those weird moments. Actually, I had bought a ticket to go to the American film market, and as I was literally overwhelmed by the thousands of people there that I did not know, in an industry I did not know, in a place, a city I did not know anyone in. I needed a break, and I went on the Santa Monica beach and I sat there to meditate and just sit with myself. I'm trying to make sense of all of this. As Steven Spielberg calls them, the whispers, literally a voice told me, you're going to move here. And it made absolutely no sense, except that my soul kind of knew that I needed to move here. And I remember looking up, saying, are you kidding? Like, really? Even though I had the dream, I didn't feel like I was necessarily ready to move. I wanted to come here and expand, but somehow my soul wanted me here. So I went along the journey and made a 3-year plan. And 3 years later, I had my first apartment and my car in LA. And so many beautiful things happened because I followed that whisper and intuition. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing all these steps towards making this place home, and sometimes in, very unexpected ways.
Hmm.
following your intuition and also your dreams. You mentioned that you discovered film scoring and
Yes.
this passion that arrived later on in your career. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, funny thing is, I was actually on tour with Garou, who's a fairly famous singer in Quebec, and we were going on tour to Europe and Russia, Belarusia, Moldavia for almost 6 months in the year with a little break in between. But all that to say, I was going to be on buses, trains, planes, in between shows, and I was thinking, I want to do something with that time. I want to explore. There was a random ad that popped up on my screen about Berkeley online, and I think it was arranging for bands. And I was like, oh, let's just try that. And as I was on tour, it was the perfect setting because I was learning to arrange for a band, and I was surrounded by all of my band members, friends, and I could ask them for advice, while I was doing the course. So it was great. But as I continued doing more and more courses, I discovered my own passion for composition, which I had not really explored that much before. And that led to me taking the course for film scoring. And that's when it clicked. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so fun. Like the creative process of supporting a story with music, understanding the emotions, the underlying message, how powerful music is to go with the story, but also, you can totally destroy a film if you don't score it well. You could take over the attention, finding the balance of really respecting the story, highlighting the story, not taking over too much space. It's a fun challenge, and so that's how I discovered it. And then I started getting some projects like the Women Warriors documentary, Women Warriors, The Voices of Change, and that was a major win for us, 8 women composers who won the Grammy Award in 2022 for the soundtrack of that documentary. And I guess that was a significant win and a validating win for me to continue on that path, and led to other films, mostly TV films, but also other projects here and there. So I would say I discovered that a little bit by chance, by exploring other elements on tour, and it led to the passion that I have today.
This is pretty incredible how you've been able to navigate this industry that is not your home country. You came here in LA, you worked on so many different projects, you learned, you've been able to create connections. How did you do that? Because it's really inspiring, but this is also such a tough uh, process to establish yourself in such a competitive industry as well.
When I decided to move here, I had a conscious thought of, and I gave myself a rule surrounding that thought, of being very respectful of the people that are already here. I wasn't trying to bully anybody out of their job. I didn't want to be seen as someone who's coming with such an ego. I'm good and I'm better and I will do better than you. It was very important for me to just be humble and learn. So I started out with a mentor who's become a very dear friend. Actually, they're kind of my family in LA now. And as an intern initially, I started out by making coffee. I started out by taking calls, by, something that at my age and my state in my career, having been recognized pretty much as one of the A-list violinists in my hometown and province, was very humbling to come back and, get the trash and. But I kind of took it with a laugh and a smile and said, you know what? It's fine. It's just my journey. I'm learning. And the 2 months that went by very quickly, even though I was doing these mundane chores, I was also learning, and I was also getting connected through this new family of mentors and friends. And, Michael Levine, to name him, introduced me to a circle of people, and ultimately to some supervisors that hired me for some of my most, prolific work. For example, with Hallmark, doing 5 Hallmark films in a year and a half, was because I was humble enough and accepted the 2 months of internship, and then he saw my work ethic. He was confident in recommending me to these people, and it led to me getting jobs. I think that it's paid off to just be humble.
I really love what you say because when I arrived here in the States, I've been always told about this mindset of trying to sell yourself and to show the best version of yourself or whatever this means.
The hustle.
Yeah, and that felt at moments like such a performance and a distortion of myself to try to match certain ways of approaching life in general, approaching business. It's interesting to see that you can be yourself and being humble and actually really connect deeply with people who see you and want to collaborate with you and resonate with your mission. So I really love that. And that brings me back to something you mentioned earlier, that is this form of unity. Maybe we can talk more about one of your
Sure.
ongoing projects, because we talk about connecting with yourself, connecting with people, and now you're exploring how we connect with the body and how it intertwines with music and healing.
Well, it is a passion of mine. Like I said earlier, I was accepted in med school, so there is a scientific part of me that's always curious about healing, about the different aspects of science and data. Since 4 years, I've actually been curious to see how we can integrate the performance and the audience and how we can connect them in a way that not only shows the data but makes the communication active, ultimately co-creating a work together, because the body receives the art, it receives a performance, and there is a reaction. There is a physiological reaction to that. And I'm very curious to capture the data and show the healing aspects of that, and hopefully use that to bring music and art into wellness centers and hospitals, and ways to care about the people in a holistic way, not just through drugs and medication, but how we can touch the soul and heal the soul. On the performance level, I think it's also very interesting to envision a way so that people can experience the art and that their bodies feed into the art, and so we co-create something together. So the study that I'm leading with two of my friends is one a breathwork practitioner, and the other one is more of a corporate setting, wellness. She designs workplaces to help people work better and be recharged during their workday. So we have similar visions in our settings. Combining that together to have this first study is very special. So we have a group of about 10 people right now where people wear their own devices, and while we're doing music and breath work, we capture the vitals of the people, also pre and post experience, to try to see any significant changes through the practice, through what we're proposing, whether it's breath work with just violin or integrating the sound bowls, or we want to explore binaurals and movement and see how each of these modalities can add something. And then we want to move into phase 2, where we would have a uniform baseline of a certain device so that we could go further and hopefully create a proper paper that could be published on this eventually, bringing awareness on how art truly heals and can be accessible to masses, raising our own vibrations, raising each individual's audience vibration to help create a better vibe for the world, right? I think that's the ultimate goal.
It's very fascinating project moving forward. This idea of how music is impacting us in so many ways, and being able to measure that and being able to see how exactly this is affecting us is truly amazing. I've always been told if you listen to certain kind of music, it's going to impact you in certain ways, but never know what exactly that meant. There is something that I felt was a little abstract or disconnected to the reality of my own body, and something that could be pleasant to me to hear, but not able to really explain the mechanism. Doesn't mean that we always have to explain everything, but I
No.
think it's really relevant to show the impact. So this is a research that you're doing right now. When are you
Hmm.
expecting to have some of their early results?
So for now, we're collecting the data. It is going to be a little bit challenging because at this stage, the first phase, we have multiple devices. So we have to also understand how to correlate each one of them. We may have to stay mostly within certain groups. So Apple Watches would be compared with Apple Watches vitals, for example, since there might be some difference in precision or the way that they treat the data. So it's part of the challenges of this first phase, which is more of a feasibility phase right now, because like we've told the participants, we're the pioneers in this, and we're learning as we go. But the main idea is to see what directions are the most interesting. If we see correlation, for example, from certain comments from the questionnaires that we're handing out, and between that and certain spikes or certain indicators in the vitals, it might indicate, even if not officially, but at least say there seems to be a direction here. When people feel some very good feeling, somehow their body temperature raised a little bit, or their heart, slowed down, or some correlation might indicate a few interesting points to explore in the future. Also, get at this point, it's also to see what are people curious about. What is the thing that they feel but can't put on a visual paper? Like, I know I feel better. How can we see that side of me? What would capture that? So we're exploring potentially adding on brainwaves more, because there's a lot of states that we can get in, especially through meditation and breath work, and understanding how what we are doing is impacting those states. We can also think of how to curate the experience to get to those states. And eventually, I would think of that as a healing concert that wouldn't be defined as, for me, when I hear healing concerts, I associate it to yoga. For some reason, and a lot of people, it's associated to new age, a type of music. But I think classical music has also been shown to really help the brain form, as even babies in the womb. So it doesn't have to be one type of music. It can be many types of music as long as it brings a vibrational content and impact that will raise your energy. I mean, some kind of music, some types of music make me feel sick if I listen to them too long. And I think that it's because there's a wave, there's a frequency in the music that my body doesn't like. And it may be different from somebody else, but I've realized that there's certain types of music that irritate me very much. And so I'm sure that there must be data that could show it. If I was wearing something, I'm sure there would be data, like my heart would be racing or something would be happening for sure, because I feel it. Yeah. So I don't know if I completely answered that question, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I'm thinking is that you're going very deep. You are talking about the audience intimacy in a way, their
Hmm.
reaction, their emotions. That is the collective experience, but also very unique experience that
Hmm.
that touches everybody a very different way. It's amazing how many things you're doing. And in the same time, I'm wondering if there are any misconception that some people have around your work, because you're a musician, you're an artist, you're doing research, you're really passionate about health, so you're also very much into learning about other industries all the time.
It could be very confusing, I suppose, just to look at my career and activity. And I feel like I've said it's been chapters of different focus. I feel like my previous chapter was very, very much film scoring focused, and that brought me to LA. And I think there's a lot of things that have shifted in the late, just the past few years because of the industry, first of all. It's just been a complete shift in the industry. And so that always, when you go through a shift, you have to question, what is my part in this? Where do I fit in now that everything has changed? I still would love to do film scoring, and I still want to do that, but I feel like right now there's a need from the audience. There's a need from the world right now to heal. And I feel that calling, probably also because it was so important for me in my 20s, and it makes sense for me to go back to that route and explore that avenue right now, which, could lead back to scoring a full documentary about this eventually. I'm very much about listening to what, the whispers are telling me, what is guiding me right now. And I definitely don't have the same calling now than I had 10 years ago because the world changed. I changed, but also the world changed. So if I keep being stubborn about my initial goal 10 years ago, I feel like I'm going to miss out on the real opportunities now, the passion that I have, and that it maybe now is the time to express it. So who knows what will come out of it? It might be confusing, but honestly, the world is very confusing right now. So I don't feel I'm more confusing than the world.
Yeah, you're piecing together so many parts of this complex world and try to address needs and evolve as the needs evolve. So aside this project you're working on, and since what you're doing echoes what's happening in this world, you released your new album, and I'd like to know what this project meant to you and which place it has in your life as part of the different initiatives you're leading today.
Well, I think there's a very big coherence with the timing of this album. As I felt myself shifting towards healing and responding to that new world need, I encountered collaborators and new musicians. And a few years ago, as Radhika Vicaria, who's the co-writer on this album with me, when we met, we were both at a time of healing. I was coming out still of a car accident. She was dealing with things. And I heard her perform. And at the time, I remembered telling myself, someday I would really love to create something with her. And I found out that she was thinking the same thing when she was hearing me play. So that phase kind of lasted maybe over a year and a half. And then I was releasing my previous album, Aspirations. That was very much inspired by me and going through the car accident and all that involved, all the healing process through that. And as I was preparing for my event, she wanted to showcase one piece. And it didn't feel sensible for her to do a full-on event for one piece. So I invited her to perform at my own event. And she asked me to play with her because she said it won't make sense if I just play and it's your event, so you should play with me. And I ended up improvising on her piece that she was performing for the first time. So our first collaboration was her performing at my event and me improvising over her piece. We had never played together. So it was kind of jumping into waters, but we both felt like we were safe in doing that. And something magical happened where the label was in the room and listening, and they were crying. And after the performance, they said, "Would you consider creating an album for us?" And so it felt like our intent kind of got a chance right there, and that's how Sacred Echoes was born. So we started the creative process, and it went fairly fast. In a few months, we wrote the 7 pieces, which was, they were recorded in London at School Farm Studios and then Vienna Synchron Stage, where they record, Mission Impossible and a lot of those films. So it was special to record a sacred inspired album in one of the top movie scoring stages. Is kind of at the same time very encouraging to see that, hey, we are open to this now. So the album itself is really a cross between East and West. She comes from a background of Indian and East African music, being born in London, but sings in Sanskrit, and so wrote Sanskrit songs and lyrics as I was writing the neoclassical part of these songs, composing, but also orchestrating and arranging, and the blend of East and West in a healing sacred echoes intent is really what we were talking about earlier, how, the both hemispheres have had some examples of music healing. We haven't been talking about it enough, but classical music has been shown to really help in many ways develop the brain, calm, and put us in a good state normally. Bringing these two hemispheres together through music is really another way to create boundless and break the culture, break the barriers that we have, just break those barriers. And I hope that it brings peace. So far, people have shared very deep emotional release that they felt by listening to the albums. We'll see where it leads, but it's a very beautiful album. We're really, really proud of it.
It is indeed beautiful, and congratulations. And congratulations also on the awards. I mean,
Thank you.
you've been very humble about all these achievements and all this hard work, and it's definitely recognized, which is so hard, especially in this industry. So, congratulations for this.
Thank
And
you.
we talked about how the society is evolving and how as humans things are also challenging for us as at a collective level. I know based also on past discussion we had together that it's tough these days to be an artist. It's tough to live
Hmm.
your values and to pursue your mission the way you're doing it. And if you are comfortable sharing how this is for you as an artist
Hmm.
to live here in a city that from the outside world you think this is pretty much the center where everything is happening,
Hmm.
the film industry and the music industry. What has it been like for you as an artist to build a part of your career here, and how is it today?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the world, the industry changed. LA changed a lot since 2015 when I decided to move here. Obviously, there was the pandemic, which hit the world in different ways. It hit Hollywood very hard, and then it was combined with multiple strikes. And, even though I'm not going to say the strikes were not meant to happen, and a lot of people supported that, and of course we want the best conditions, but the fact that it was back to back kind of destroyed the industry a little bit, and a lot of the movies ended up being produced and shot in various other countries. The other countries saw this as an opportunity, obviously, to bring the market. And so it developed. Spain, for example, has become one of the hubs, if not the hub for Hallmark. Like, who would have known? Korea, Italy. Now Netflix has just been, it's fine, we have other sources, So now they're producing a lot of content elsewhere. And the problem is that the people here in LA, from, production to post production, have been really impacted. The fact that it impacted the main population or the population that works in that industry also impacted shops, stores, restaurants. So a lot of shops and restaurants have closed down because the population that was worked and hired in the industry being struggling right now had impact on the whole entire ecosystem. And I'm not sure that the city really and then the state really realized the danger. I think they were a little blind to this, because I would imagine that there would have been a bit more preventive resources. But whatever reason, that didn't happen. And then there were many fires that destroyed the homes and the studios of so many that also now have to rebuild their own personal lives. So the struggle has been piling up for 5 years. And I feel like it's a little bit being blind to just think, oh, we're just going to go back to what it was. I don't think LA's going to go back to what it was. It will be different, and it's very resilient, and it is rebuilding, but it will take years. So I think that has forced not only me, but a lot of musicians to rethink their place, rethink their careers, rethink what they can do in this world. And it's also had us reflect on what do we want to do? Are we going to teach more, to create more artists that may be starving? Or are we going to bring our art in a way that is different than what we imagined initially? Which is kind of what I'm doing. I'm, in a way, opening a branch to something that's very meaningful to me that I did not have time to do while I was scoring more for projects like movies and television. The fact that the industry has changed forces the artist to think of other ways, think of other things that they can bring. Although a lot of people have moved out, a lot of my friends moved out of LA because it's just not viable anymore. So yeah, there's kind of a transition. I feel like the season has turned and AI is here as well. So that's been a very menacing aspect on top of it all, on top of streaming, on top of the devaluation of the art. Unfortunately, the content society, the content culture has really devalued art. We keep hearing it's so easy to create content. Anybody can do it. You can become a millionaire on YouTube and blah, blah, blah. But that is content creation. I have nothing against, becoming famous on a platform, but it doesn't really resonate to every artist. For me, I would rather create one meaningful album in a year than say I have to create 100 to survive. That's not why I'm doing this. So the numbers game is not going to be okay with everybody. So if it's not okay for you, then you have to find other ways to, to survive, to also find meaningful opportunities that people value. Because it's also that. I think there's a responsibility on the audience side to understand that what they are willing or not willing to pay and compensate the artist will impact the future of the entire culture, the entire society. Because if individuals are not willing to be able to contribute to that art, which supports our culture, then culture might become AI driven. Unfortunately, that might be one of the outcomes of this. So there is a responsibility as well in the public to educate themselves on how best to support artists. And it is not by listening on Spotify and platforms for most artists. It's not that. So other ways. Buy the merch, buy the tickets, go see shows, support, show up.
Listening to you, I realize how this career and passion is not only about creating bridges and connections and touching the audience like another language. There's also a part of beauty and emotion that is part of this process, and truth to yourself. And in the same time, it goes hand in hand with this resilience. It's important to highlight that your mission is also having all these facets all together that you need to integrate, despite the fact that sometimes you're not supported as much as you should. So I'd like to ask you, from your perspective, if you had to describe it with 3 words, what does it take today to be successful as an artist? What would it be?
Authenticity, for sure. I think resilience and passion. Yeah, very, very important. You can never predict where career is going to be. The passion is so important because that always drives you further, and your authenticity is what people are going to recognize you for. Trying to imitate someone else or trying to be in the shadow and being the next best whoever is never going to be you. So, yeah, you have to show up.
And how would you describe you as an artist? What are you trying to convey and embody as an artist?
I'm an explorer that wants to touch souls, and it's important for me that the music that I create is always with the goal of reaching something very deep down in the soul of the audience, that they can hold that emotional impact and go back and cherish that moment and hopefully release something from it, grow from it, and get inspired. Yeah, the deep connection is very important for me.
And this is something that you definitely conveyed today, Nathalie. Thank you so much for sharing your story and to be so authentic and passionate and resilient for all of us today to have the chance to listen to your craft and to your music and to learn from what you're building around you, for you and for others. Um, we are reaching the end of this interview, but is there anything you would like to add and we haven't discussed so far?
Honestly, thank you, first of all, for this really deep interview with a lot of interesting questions. I love to answer these meaningful questions. It's about the true reasons why we do this. I don't know anything else that I would add. Just, continue being inspired, continue supporting art, continue seeking how we can all as a community best connect and cherish the artists that we have in our community. How can we all support each other to raise our energy and become a better society?
Thank you so much. That's a
Thank you.
very good way to end this interview. We'll also add Nathalie links and information in the description for the
Yeah,
audience.
please reach out.
Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to her and please go listen to what she does. This is truly amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Solène. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Borders and joining us in our celebration of the journeys, successes, and stories of immigrants making their mark in the US. If you found today's conversation inspiring, please be sure to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also find more information at beyondborderspod.com. Your support helps us to keep sharing these inspiring and powerful stories with the world. Until next time, keep going, keep growing, and go beyond borders.